Welcome to the Compact Murder podcast from compactmurder.com, formerly known as 5 Minute Murder, the show where we explore murders, murderers, serial killers, and assassinations. This is episode 38, The Murder of King Henry VI. It's one thing to be born a king. It's another to die in a tower, alone, powerless, and quietly erased from history. But that's exactly what happened to Henry VI, England's gentle, tragic monarch, whose murder in 1471 marked not just the end of a life, but the end of a dynasty. Henry VI's reign was doomed almost from the start. He became King of England before he could walk, inheriting the crown at just 9 months old, after the sudden death of his father, Henry V. That same inheritance came with a claim to the French throne thanks to his grandfather Charles VI of France. For a brief moment in history, the English crown held sway over both England and France. But the baby on the throne would not be a conqueror. He would be a quiet man, a spiritual man, and tragically, a fragile one. Henry was never suited to the chaos he inherited. He was gentle, thoughtful, even scholarly, but he wasn't a ruler. As he grew, it became clear he lacked the temperament for politics and the strength for war. He suffered from mental breakdowns, including a total collapse in 1453 when he became completely unresponsive for more than a year. With a king unable to rule, England became a battleground of competing factions. His wife, Margaret of Anjou, fiercely defended his position, but their grip on power was constantly slipping. Enter the House of York, led by Richard, Duke of York. He believed he had a stronger claim to the throne and wasn't shy about making it known. And just like that, England descended into the Wars of the Roses, a brutal, blood-soaked conflict between the rival houses of Lancaster and York. On paper, Henry was the head of the Lancastrian side. In reality, he was barely more than a figurehead, a pawn in a deadly game of thrones. The tide turned definitively in 1461. After a major victory at the Battle of Towton, the Yorkists seized control. Henry was deposed, and Edward IV, the son of Richard of York, was crowned king. Henry fled. Alongside Queen Margaret and their son Edward, he sought safety in Scotland and then in France. He spent the next decade as a king in exile. But nothing in the Wars of the Roses was ever truly settled. In 1470, the political winds shifted again. Richard Neville, the powerful Earl of Warwick, known to history as the Kingmaker, turned against Edward IV and helped restore Henry VI to the throne. It was a stunning comeback, but a short-lived one. Henry may have been king again in name, but Warwick and Margaret were calling the shots. Just 6 months later, everything fell apart. Edward IV returned from exile with an army of his own. He marched into London and captured Henry without resistance. Soon after, he crushed the remaining Lancastrian forces at the Battle of Tewkesbury. Queen Margaret was captured. Prince Edward, Henry's only son and heir, was killed. Some say murdered after the battle. With the Lancastrian royal line wiped out, there was only one man left standing in the way of total Yorkist control, Henry himself. He was locked away in the Tower of London, not as a king, not even as a political prisoner with influence, just a loose end that needed tying up. On the night of May 21st, 1471, King Henry VI was declared dead. The official story? He died of grief. That's what they said. Heartbreak over the death of his son. And while poetic, it wasn't very convincing. This was a man who had lived through a lifetime of personal and national trauma, a man who had seen everything stripped from him, his crown, his kingdom, his family, and through all of that, he had endured. Yet now, conveniently, just days after being captured and made irrelevant, he drops dead. Few believed it, most still don't. Modern historians agree that Henry was almost certainly murdered. It was clean, quiet, and efficient. No trial, no bloodshed in the streets. Just a quiet end behind stone walls far from public view. The likeliest explanation is that Edward IV, or someone very close to him, ordered Henry's death to prevent any future Lancastrian uprising. With Henry alive, rebellion was always a possibility. With Henry dead, the war was truly over. One popular theory suggests that the murder was carried out by Edward's younger brother Richard, the Duke of Gloucester. He's better known to us now as Richard III. While there's no hard evidence, later Tudor chroniclers believed it, and it certainly fits with Richard's later reputation. Henry was likely stabbed while at prayer in his cell. A quiet kill, no fanfare, no resistance. One last act of violence to end a decades-long war. He was buried in Chertsey Abbey at first, though years later Henry VII, founder of the Tudor dynasty, had his body moved to St George's Chapel at Windsor. It was a political move, an effort to rewrite Henry's legacy. Pilgrims came to his tomb, miracles were reported, there was even talk of sainthood. In death, Henry became something he never was in life, a symbol of peace and martyrdom. And ironically, his death made room for the very dynasty that would eventually claim to honour his memory. With Henry VI gone, the House of Lancaster was finished. But a distant relative, Henry Tudor, would rise up, defeat Richard III at Bosworth in 1485, and become Henry VII. He married Elizabeth of York, uniting the warring houses and giving birth to the Tudor era. So what can we say about the murder of Henry VI? It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't public. There were no grand speeches, no last words recorded. Just a quiet death in a dark tower, orchestrated for the sake of stability. And yet this single act changed the course of English history. It ended the Lancastrian cause, it gave Edward IV complete control, and it cleared the board for the next great shift in power. Henry VI wasn't the worst king England ever had, but he was certainly one of the most tragic. A man born into greatness, crushed by the weight of a crown he never wanted, and silenced in the shadows. His murder wasn't just the end of a reign. It was the full stop at the end of a blood-soaked sentence that had been written over decades of war, betrayal, and ambition. I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Compact Murder Podcast from compacthistories.com. If you did, why not leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts? And while you're there, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. If you would like to support us more directly, please consider buying us a coffee. Head on over to compacthistories.com/murdercoffee to see how. Also, please check out our other Compact podcasts. You will find them all at compacthistories.com. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time.